And now it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for today, Professor Stephen Ruth. Steve Ruth is a professor of public policy at George Mason University and director of the International Center for Applied Studies in Information Technology. He has taught courses on technology, robotics, globalization, and more. We're thrilled to have him join us here today to share with us the pros and cons, the pluses, the minuses, the blessings and the curse of artificial intelligence, and what keeps him up at night. Please welcome Professor Stephen Ruth. Do you want the chair? Do you want the chair?
Just put it there.
Okay.
Thank you. How's this? Yeah, a little bit more. Thank you. Hi, everybody. What a treat to be here with you, and supervisors and distinguished silver shielders and all you other fellow members of the AARP community. I'm a member, too. I've only had 2 jobs my whole life. I was a Navy officer. I had a 23-year career in the Navy. I was a captain in the Navy, and then I became a professor at George Mason, and I've been a professor there for 46 years. So, I wanted to just take a moment to brag a little bit about George Mason University. I don't know if you realize what's been happening there. We have the largest population university in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We have over 40,000 students and some very distinguished programs, undergraduate as well as graduate. It's been amazing. I got there when they were just building the field house, et cetera, and now they're tearing it down. So it's been wonderful to watch it. And if you just keep track of it now and then, I think it was day before yesterday, I noticed that our doctorate in nursing program is rated the best of all public universities in the United States, just for example. But there are all kinds of programs like that. And yesterday in the Washington Post, there was a story about Professor Missy Cummings. The Auto Trend magazine named her one of the top movers and shakers in the entire auto industry. She's a former Navy fighter pilot, and she's one of our professors. I hope if you get a chance, take a good look at George Mason University if your kids or grandkids, or we have some great grandkids. And I'd love if they all decided to do that. Anyway, I just wanted to put in an ad for my employer. This topic we're going to speak about today is big. A group of technology executives warned not too long ago that AI poses a risk of extinction on a par with pandemics or nuclear war. And I think it's quite interesting. The World Economic Forum that meets in Switzerland every year in January, where all the most famous people in the world, movie stars, presidents of countries, distinguished executives, everybody shows up for that. They issue a report before they start, and they say these are the things to worry about in the future. Well, the number 2 item on that list was the environment. The number 1 item on the list was misinformation due to artificial intelligence scams. So I think that's a very significant thing. I'm not going to be completely dystopian here, but I think it's important to realize that this, in a global way, this is quite a issue to worry about. Bill Gates made this comment: AI is the most transformative technology any of us will see in our lifetimes, even ahead of the internet, smartphones, even ahead of personal computers. And I do a lot of lectures for OLLI, the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, and also for Encore Learning in Arlington on this topic and several others. And one of them is called Summoning the Demons. Now, I didn't invent that phrase. That's Elon Musk has always talked about artificial intelligence that way, summoning the demons. So in case I don't get a chance to finish everything here, I want to be sure you know that there's a lot of good news, but there's also a lot of bad news on this topic. As a professor at the Schar School of Policy and Government at George Mason University, by the way, our dean, Mark Rozelle, he is a distinguished, he's one of these people that academics really kind of envy. I know I envy him. I hate him for this, but he's not only a distinguished scholar, a couple of books a year. He's the dean of this gigantic school, but also he has worked with Dwight Schar, and that's our school is named the Schar School after Mr. Schar. And he's also brought in some of the most amazing faculty members that can be found anywhere. And to top it all off, he's nice. So I think that if you see his columns in the Washington Post and elsewhere, but I'm very proud to be part of the Schar School. Anyway, as a professor there, I've been teaching an elective graduate course that has been very popular, not because of me, because I'm just an average, you can tell, I'm just an average professor, but the content, which is mostly dystopian, I usually have, the limit is usually 20 students for a graduate course. For the last 8 semesters, I've had 30, it overflows, because we look at 70 different technologies. By the way, I'll be glad to send you the list and the links that go with it. Let me give you my email address, just so it's real easy if you decide that you want to contact me. You know, we're professors. We get lonely, you know. we love getting messages. And it's RUTH, Ruth, at gmu.edu. I did this in Woodbridge last week, or 2 weeks ago. And I got a lot of calls from people who wanted to know this and that. And they also gave me some good information as well. So I hope you'll be open to checking in with me. But anyway, I've had this opportunity to teach this course for 8 semesters. And the things that some of the other topics we discuss in that course, because artificial intelligence, though important, is not the only issue to worry about. And that's really kind of the title of this course, policy issues to worry about in technology. These are some of the other ones that students choose from. Crypto security, dark web, deep web, dangers to water grid and power grid, deep fake, doxing, e-pornography, Dobbs decision effect on electronic surveillance of abortion sites, e-waste, fake news, predictive analytics, ransomware, revenge porn, sextortion, swarming drones, killer robots, and about 60 more topics. So that's why the students sign up for it, because some of those topics interest them. And they all have to pick 6 of them to specialize in. There are some big questions out there that we're going to be examining. Thank you. And these are a couple of these big questions we're going to look at that need to be answered in this subject. Is AI going to replace me, my kids, and my grandkids in the workplace? Is AI going to start a war? Remember, Armenia and Azerbaijan had a war a couple of years ago, which was decided by AI-directed drones from Azerbaijan. They won that war. Can AI have a positive effect on the serious societal problems like climate change, homelessness, starvation? And is there any way to control the rapid development of AI so that it doesn't cause harm? Here's a definition of AI. I'm going to skip a little bit here and there because I want to be sure that you have plenty of time to enjoy the rest of the program. Artificial intelligence is a set of technologies that enables computers to perform a variety of advanced functions such as understanding and translating spoken and written language, analyzing data, and making recommendations. It's essentially software that can learn patterns from information such as language, data. These are all the different ways that AI gets trained, or the term we use is scraped. Language, data, images, audio, and online behavior. And they use these patterns to make predictions and perform tasks that normally require human intelligence. And there's a whole history of AI. I'll just give you some samples, but John McCarthy in 1956, a Stanford professor, was the one who invented the term. But in the 1970s, there was computerized checkers and backgammon. And then IBM's Deep Blue defeated Garry Kasparov, the chess champion, in 1997. The first commercial robot vacuum cleaner came out in 2002, and Dyson's has one now, a special one that in case you missed any dirt, it sends you an alert that you have to go back, get more. Ken Jennings, this really made me sad because I really love Ken Jennings. Ken Jennings was defeated in jeopardy by IBM's Watson AI program in 2011. AlphaGo defeated the greatest Go player in 2015. That's an amazingly complex game, more complex than checkers. That's all been pretty amazing, but the developments of recent years, especially the last few years, have been pretty amazing. The term scraping is used a lot. You're going to hear it again and again because that's where artificial intelligence, where all these special systems. Have any of you here use ChatGPT? Use it? Okay, good. Well, anyway, ChatGPT is the best known, but certainly not the only one of these that are available. I'm going to mention it in a moment. But Claude Shannon is the one who proposed some of the theory behind it, and he's sometimes called the father of information theory. But about 15 years ago, a cognitive psychologist named Jeffrey Hinton, you may have heard of him because he worked for Google, and he's been very much in the news lately. He's worried. He's one of a group that's called the doomers. There's zoomers and doomers. And the zoomers are the ones who think AI ought to just go as fast as it can go, intrude on us, learn about us, entertain us, do everything it can. Those are called the zoomers, but Jeffrey Hinton has become a doomer. He's beginning to worry that AI is getting too smart. It is able to do too many things that are inherently human things. I'm just going to skip a little bit more about him, but ChatGPT, which I think is very important because ChatGPT 5 is coming out later this year. And so there's going to be a lot of scraping because all of this information that is used in artificial intelligence has to be scraped from sources that are out there, including your information, other people's information. There are so many authors out there that have been filing lawsuits against OpenAI, which is the ChatGPT company, because of their scraping of literature. I mean, there's a biblical, I do a lot of talks about the Bible too. It's my hobby. There's the idea of being rewarded for your work, and even the Tower of Babel, you know that story in Genesis chapter 11. Those stories begin to come to the fore when you talk about going in and scraping people's books and scraping things that they've written. Anyway, I'll mention that at the end because a lot of lawsuits are coming out right now against these companies. A quick word about scraping. It's become very controversial, and there are hundreds of lawsuits pending against big companies like OpenAI, Microsoft, Google, and some of them. And where they get their information is from Wikipedia, books, articles, videos, movies, conversation. Almost anything that's out there is scrapable. In terms of some of the terms that are used with artificial intelligence, most of the things that you've been reading about up to now are referred to generally as narrow AI. But the next level is referred to as AGI, Artificial General Intelligence. And simply stated, that's when a system can reason just like a person. And the ultimate level, which is called sentient AI, that's when when the system actually thinks it's a person. And there's a term that we use in artificial intelligence called a singularity. And that's the era when a technological growth becomes uncontrollable and irreversible. That, like The Sorcerer's Apprentice, that's a poem by Goethe, long, long ago, 1800 or so. But if you happen to see, you're probably too young to remember this, but there's a movie called Fantasia. And The Sorcerer's Apprentice was I think a Mickey Mouse-like figure. The story is that the sorcerer left his apprentice and went away for a while. And the apprentice figured he didn't want to have to carry all that water around, so he enchanted a broom so that the broom could carry the water. And the broom was doing that just fine, but he didn't know how to turn the broom off. So in the video, the broom is constantly carrying more and more water up through the castle. And luckily, the sorcerer showed up and saved it. But that is referred to when the sorcerer doesn't show up. That's referred to in this field as the singularity. The singularity. And so in terms of some of the numbers that go with this whole subject, Here's some that might be interesting. Google is the leader in terms of subscribers with about, remember there's 8 billion people in the world. 4 billion are Google customers. They have 90% of all of the searches in the world today. And about 5.5 billion people are on the internet. Next is Facebook with 3 billion users. YouTube, 2 billion. Instagram, 2 billion. TikTok, about 1 billion. By the way, I think it's 170 million Americans use TikTok. There's a lot of people, including me. But there's a lot of people who complain about it. It's an interesting issue. It's not so much about AI, but there's a lot. They have a lot of users out there. And X, or Twitter, has around 500 million users. And Google alone has over 2 billion lines of code in its applications. One more statistic: the total amount of data created, captured, and copied and consumed in the world is around 100 zettabytes. That's a term that means 100 trillion gigabytes, or 100 followed by 21 zeros. That's a lot of scraping capability. Getting back to ChatGPT, it stands for GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. And the really important part of that is the P, the pre-trained, because there are vast computers that do the scraping, the very, very complicated programs. But there's some energy issues now beginning to pop up about this subject, just like they have been with cryptocurrency, the vast amounts of energy that are needed. And there's a new plan. 1 or 2 companies are putting together a plan for a $100 billion computer system that will help do this scraping better. The key is getting the information, so getting all that information scraped and examined to the point where it can perform all these amazing things. And I'll mention some of the amazing things in just a moment. Instead of that, there are only a few companies that are, if you wanted to use a policy statement to try to figure out how to control AI, one way might be, some of the experts think that maybe going back to how we handled nuclear power way back might work, because there was some difficulty getting the materials and the expertise. And in terms of artificial intelligence, there are only 2 countries that make most of the transistors. That's South Korea and Taiwan. And there are only 3 countries right now that make the big computers. That's Denmark, United States, and Japan. So one of the issues that you need to think about, I don't have an answer to it, but the Congress is working on it, and the European Union has already, for 27 countries, set of rules for this, that some way to control the power and the spread of artificial intelligence, some of these manifestations of it, which can be very dangerous. I'm going to come to those in a minute. I don't mean this to be an afterthought, but since most of AI examples so far have been about text, probably the most exciting and challenging aspects of AI are its visual capabilities. Programs that are capable of doing tasks like face recognition, self-driving cars, object detection and tracking, medical imaging, monitoring, license plate etc., and retail analysis, and of course surveillance. Incidentally, you've probably read that a lot of these surveillance techniques work great with people who are white, but do not work well with people who are non-white. So there are all kinds of lawsuits coming out from that. And there's a professor at MIT named Gio Ogaboli who does we spent a week on this in my class, just going over some of the issues with facial recognition. It seems like a slam dunk. We should be using it for some things. But there's some cities who have actually prohibited it now. And there's some countries like China which use it all the time. There are 2 other advantages that have always intrigued me about artificial intelligence. One is called literature-based discovery, LBD, which involves analyzing existing scientific literature using generative language techniques to look for new hypotheses, new connections and ideas that have missed before. In other words, go through without any bias, just go through, see if there aren't some scientific possibilities that we haven't thought about before. And another one are called self-driving labs. These are robotic systems that use AI to form new hypotheses based on analysis of existing data, or performing hundreds of thousands of experiments. And one thing about AI, everybody hoped that it would be able to reduce the number of people having to do dirty, dangerous, dark jobs. And it has done that. And it's had some very nice effects. And there's also a new kind of AI application which doctors use quite a bit, and which General Motors in plants, and at least in Germany, have used in the past. And it's called cobots. Those are robots that kind of sit beside you and work with you sometimes it's just a computer screen in the case of analyzing x-rays. Other times it's a actual physical device where the robot or the other sensor is right beside you. And it reminded me of Woody Allen had a kind of a reminiscence. I think it was a story. He said that he was talking about in Isaiah, it mentions the lion lying down with the lamb. And Woody Allen said, but the lamb won't get much sleep. And some people look at cobots that way. Well, some of the bad news about, let me give you a little bit of the good. I'm basically concerned about the bad news, but I don't want to forget the good news. I think in terms of application for AI, my two favorite and most hopeful parts of it are medicine and agriculture. In medicine, there's so many different applications that are possible. Many of them are being used right now to save lives, to improve efficiency and make things better. And in agriculture, there are just a huge variety of ways that it's already being used to improve crops, improve irrigation, things like that. Those are my favorites, but there are plenty of other good news stories. There's one at Georgia Tech University. At Georgia Tech. There's a program there which I really think is wonderful. It has to do with a master's in computer science. And by the way, it's not just at Georgia Tech, it's at Arizona State and a bunch of other schools are doing this. It's at Georgia Tech. If you want to get a Master of Computer Science, it's a top-notch degree worldwide, or a Master of Data Analytics. You can take a course two different ways. You can take it face-to-face, like meeting some professor like me, for 40, 50 minutes several times a week, or using certain new AI techniques that are beginning to get better and better. And both degrees are completely, they take about 18 months. They're very, very successful. The students do very well in them. The one with face-to-face costs $40,000. The one that's just using the AI costs $10,000. Now, it's a very interesting, I think you can sense what that there might be some professors saying, wait a minute, maybe you don't need me. And I think that's an interesting issue in the future. It's one that I've written articles about, and they haven't been very popular. Those are just some things to think about. I do want to mention some of the dangers. I mean, the obvious dangers are possible job displacement, although we haven't seen too much of that yet. And the obvious dangers of inequities. And I'm just going to mention one that you can conjure up many more, but it's called LAWS, L-A-W-S. It stands for Lethal Autonomous Weapons Systems. Or you can look it up on Dr. Google, and it's called killer robots. They are widely used. They're widely used. A lot of the Russian fleet is being seriously hampered by the Ukrainians' use of these drones, these robotic drones that they're able to use to sink ships. They've sunk some battleships. They've made some parts of Crimea area just the Russian Navy can't go in there. So some of them are very, very effective. And I'm just bringing this up as a reminder that some of these issues are important, because they also mean that the United States, all the major powers have these. And it means that the decision to fire, the decision to go at a target, is made by an algorithm. And there's a kind of, by the way, once again, if you want me to send you the congressional, I had an article in the Richmond Times-Dispatch a couple of months ago about this, where I just brought it up, and I had a lot of course, you always have to have references, and so there's a lot of congressional research studies on this. The United States is very interested in this technology, and nobody has forsworn it. The United States, the United Nations tried to get countries to forswear this, just not promise not to do it, and none of the big countries have promised not to do. They're called laws, lethal autonomous weapon systems. Now, I want to read you a couple of examples from the real world, the world that my students see every day, from the about this subject, because I think it's helpful. There's one that was a cartoon in the New Yorker a few days ago. You know, one of the things that these systems can do, these AI systems, including, for example, ChatGPT, you can simply give it a scenario. If you want to write a beautiful poem to your dearest dear in Russian, in iambic pentameter, in the style of Goethe or Shakespeare, you can do that, and it usually takes about 3 seconds to get it. And so this was this cartoon in the New Yorker just last week, I think. There was a dad sitting in his daughter's bedroom there by her bed. And he had his laptop there, and he was poised to enter something in the laptop. And these are called, when you do give AI instructions, they're called prompts. So the girl is saying to her dad, as she's holding on to her teddy bear, about the prompt she wants. Dad, here's my prompt. Please tell me a story about a puppy who goes to Jupiter on her birthday to solve a mystery, and she is a mermaid, using an engaging and humorous tone in approximately 1,000 words in the style of Ernest Hemingway. And that's the sort of thing you can do routinely. You might say, well, what's the value of that? But there's a lot of other things you can do routinely that are more nefarious. And one of them, of course, is that you can write individual letters to voters, and this is what they're worried about for elections, that these systems are capable of writing me a note that sounds like it's aimed directly at me, you know, just for me, and it's actually, it knows all my vitals, so it can do that. So prompts, and there's another thing, if any of you have kids or grandkids who are, you're worried about it because they've decided to take a liberal arts course, there is a thing, a very popular kind of job now in artificial intelligence. It's called a prompt engineer. And the prompt engineer is the person who writes those prompts, like that little girl was talking about, writes the prompts and basically says, these are the, in other words, doesn't know how to code, is not a geek, typically is not a geek. And so they're able to tell the computer, to tell the system what to do, and it'll generate vast amounts of code based on that prompt. It's called a prompt engineer. They pay about $250,000 a year. And if you want me to send you an article about that from the Wall Street Journal, where one of their reporters actually went in and tried to sign up for that job, I'll be glad to send it to you. Ruth at gmu.edu. Excuse me? Well, I think it fits into a curriculum because it's basically mentioning. No, we don't teach it at George Mason, but it's not the way it's not teachable exactly. There are certain characteristics which do not include a computer science degree, which make a prompt engineer very, very successful. And there's not a major in prompt engineering, but there may be someday. A couple of other things. There's a fight over the right to repair cars, and it takes a wild turn. A landmark right to repair law in Massachusetts. One of my students did a research paper on this. And the landmark right to repair law for Massachusetts is great for car owners, but the U.S. government argue it's also great for hackers. Basically, there's some ways you can hack into those cars' computer systems, and this makes it more possible for that to happen. And 16 car makers and their vehicles hacked by a telematics API's infrastructure. Multiple vulnerabilities identified in vehicles from 16 manufacturers allowed researchers to control car functions, shut down engines, and obtain sensitive information. And you probably read about that United Healthcare cyber attack recently. That was $1 billion. that was lost. And the LA school system had a ransomware attack. I think it was about a year and a half ago, around September, when everybody's going to school. And they're the second largest school system in the country, and they had to pay, I think it was $10 or $15 million in ransomware. Those problems they're getting even more dangerous because AI is able to find vulnerabilities, particularly in churches, hospitals. Many of them are vulnerable to this. Now here's a positive one. Energy guzzling AI is also the future of energy savings. So just a reminder that AI can give you enough insights to probably save a lot of energy, even though it uses a lot of energy to do it. Here's one. Generative AI is challenging the very notion of copyright. The New York Times is currently suing OpenAI for allegedly using its expansive archives without permission to train chatbots. In a recent filing, OpenAI accused the Times back of trying to hack GPT in order to, in other words, there's these wars going on, and the many authors, famous author, James Patterson, who writes about a book a week, he has a lot of these lawsuits already in. So I think in terms of my predictions for the future, and I'll get to those now, what's going to happen, and I think one of the things that's going to happen is that there are going to be a lot more lawsuits like that. Now, getting back to those questions I posed at the beginning, is AI going to replace me, my kids, or my grandkids, my great-grandkids in the workplace? This is the area where the Zoomers and the Doomers disagree most. A recent Washington Post op-ed described a very positive views. People like Eric Brynjolfsson, a famous, we call him FFP's famous full professor he's at Stanford. He and Andrew McCabe and many others, they feel that the dull, dangerous, dirty, dreary jobs will be done by robots, and many of today's workers will be able to have aspire to higher jobs, better paying jobs. As you would expect, the Doomers have an entirely different version. They see dramatic political disruptions due to misinformation in political campaigns, deep fakes used to steal from unsuspecting persons. A lot of jobs are going to be affected for sure, especially knowledge workers and certain clerical tasks that are easily turned over to algorithms. Is AI going to start a war? That was one of the questions I posed in the beginning. It was certainly used to finish a war not too long ago when Armenia and Azerbaijan were contending in the Nagorno-Karabakh region. The decisive element that won the war for Azerbaijan was guided armed drones purchased from Turkey, which devastated the Armenian defenses. With respect to starting a war, a book co-authored by a really famous retired Navy four-star admiral, James Stavridis, came out last year. It was called 2034. Its theme was a dramatically escalating series of technology steps that eventually resulted in a war between China and the United States with serious consequences to both countries. No spoiler here, but the ultimate strategy turned out to be one that relied on older technology and not fresh new approaches. In its sequel, 2054, just dropped at your bookstore, it visualizes a world where artificial general intelligence has taken over and some very bad people are using it to gain and consolidate power. One book is called 2034 and the other is 2054. Can AI have a positive impact on serious societal problems like climate change, homelessness, and starvation? Yes. All the things I mentioned already can be used to come up with very powerful solutions for many of the most serious problems. But the catch is that governments have to agree on implementing them. So as I finish up here, I want to just leave you with a couple of thoughts that I believe are appropriate and things. Should I worry about this? Sure, I would worry about it. Should my kids get into this? Yes, I would urge you to get into it too, because you can ChatGPT is available to everybody. You can write nice poems or bedtime stories for your kids. You can also write a pretty good speech for a wonderful audience. I didn't do that. I don't want you to think I did. But I would urge everyone, and there are plenty of other tools like that. There's Meta has one called Llama, And my favorite is one called Perplexity, because it gives you footnotes. A lot of these programs don't give you, of course, it doesn't always give you the right footnotes. And you may remember the lawyer in, I think it was in New York, who sent a brief to a judge, and it turned out he used ChatGPT for the brief, and it turned out all the footnotes were wrong, and the judge almost had him debarred. So you have to be careful. But I think I would end up by Yuval Harari. He's a really famous, he's a well-known public intellectual speaker, author of that book called Sapiens, which has been on the bestseller list for like 5 years, I think, and many other influential books. He was recently on the NewsHour just a couple of nights ago. And he's had trouble. He doesn't think adults pay enough attention to his writing, so he's written a book for kids called The Unstoppable Us. In it, he recommends that readers, that humans have amazingly powerful and innovative capabilities, and also that they have sometimes missed important challenges and allowed disasters to happen that could have been avoided. He mentions that his top 3 worries are climate, nuclear war, and artificial intelligence. Why artificial intelligence? His concern is that unlike some of the other innovations to which it is compared, like the printing press, artificial intelligence has the ability to make decisions and create brand new ideas. Printing presses can't do that. So my suggestion to this group, in addition to following the excellent advice you're going to hear from these wonderful professionals, and plus I was very much interested in what those 2 supervisors mentioned, because they are so obviously concerned about these issues. In addition to that, I hope you'll be open to the idea that you can make a difference in stopping some of this. I'm a policy professor, so my classes are trying to figure out all the time ways that different levels of government can deal with different challenges. How long since you wrote your congressman or your representative or your supervisor or your mail or your delegate? As you can tell, the delegates and many, many other people here that I've known are very, very interested in this. Don Beyer, who's my congressman, for example, he and another colleague have proposed a really good AI plan for the entire U.S. to follow. It's as you know, it takes a while, but also Don Beyer is taking a course in machine learning at my university in the building right next to mine. He's a congressman, and he's got a lot of things on his mind, but he still wants to learn enough about this to do that. I think that and I met Delegate Maldonado last week. I've talked to Delegate Marcus Simon a few times, and I'm just so impressed that all these elected officials and supervisors are so interested in this. But I think you need to be open to the idea that sometimes if you've got something you want to bring up, working through AARP or any other way, that's not a bad idea to use your power to influence your legislators. So on that note, I just want to thank you for listening to me this time. Don't forget, George Mason is a really amazing place, in case you haven't looked into it lately. And I'm proud to be part of them, and I'm also a proud member of AARP. Thank you very much. Thanks. Thank you. I got it. Thanks.